Hello there, all you beautiful people. My name is Lebushki, and welcome back to another movie review. This time for the movie Mercy. Now, I heard a little bit of controversy about this movie because of its ties and portrayal to AI. And while I think some of those are valid, I also don't really think so. The tagline at the top says, "Prove your innocence to an AI judge or face execution." And apparently that was just a big turnoff for a lot of people. But honestly, it's not that bad. And it's not that deep. And trust me, I have multitudes of problems with AI. Anyways, we'll get more into that. But this movie stars Chris Pratt and Rebecca Ferguson. Chris Pratt is a pretty familiar face from Parks and Rec, Guardians of the Galaxy, and most random movies, random popularized action movies from maybe the last decade. And Rebecca Ferguson is probably best known for uh, the Dune, what will soon be a trilogy, and the Mission Impossible movies. At least in my eyes, that's what I know her best as. But let's just hop right in. It's a pretty generic PG-13 action flick. I do mean that complimentarily. Uh, I know that's kind of crazy to say because you wouldn't necessarily think generic as a good thing, but in this case, it kind of is. It's not really. Its plot isn't anything super crazy. It's entertaining. It's one of those things that I think people call a popcorn movie. That doesn't mean it's a bad movie, but you go, you enjoy it, and you're like, yeah, I liked it. And then end of story. That's it. I think the concept and premise are both plausible with the rise of AI in our everyday lives. I think something like this could entirely happen. Hopefully, not anytime soon, and hopefully, it won't. But I've been hopeful about a lot of things, and usually I'm proven wrong, which does suck. All in all, though, I do think it is a decent murder mystery because the plot essentially centers on Chris Pratt's character, who's been accused of killing his wife, and before an AI judge, he has to prove his innocence. So it's weird because all in all, this movie should work, but there's certain ways that it doesn't, and that's where the cons come in. The choppy camera work and cinematography, due to most of the movie being recordings. Uh, It's really weird to describe. I don't really know how to describe it or what the technical term for it is. But this movie's kind of just like Chris Pratt is opening a million browser tabs and, sifting through evidence. It's kind of like watching a case unfold live before you. And because of that, Chris Pratt's trapped in like one room before this judge. And so it could get pretty boring if you're not really into that, because it's kind of him going over multiple recordings, setting a scene, FaceTiming other people, and asking them questions. So if it doesn't work for you, that's fine, which would probably be one of the reasons why this movie hasn't done so well. But it worked well enough for me, even though I wasn't a huge fan of that kind of thing. At least by the end, things change up. And the last con I have to say is is this really pro AI? I don't really think it's as pro AI as people are saying. I mean, let's be honest, AI is becoming very huge in the modern day, and I believe that to be very unfortunate. I really, really dislike AI just all around. It's stupid. It pirates off the work of the more skilled and does it with quote unquote ease. And anyone I ever see really posting AI, I'm just like, ugh, disgusting. But the central conflict of AI in this movie is like it's a futuristic LA. I believe it's LA. I could be wrong. Or maybe it's just a futuristic city. And, despite all their best efforts, the police are trying to arrest people and get them off the streets, but they just keep getting released and the problems keep persisting. So they wanted a solution, one that will take the the weight of the job off of the courts. So they make an AI judge where you have to prove your innocence between it, and the AI judge can only look at the facts instead of just the emotion or any other aspects. And on one hand, like you can understand why they'd want that. It's supposed to help supposed to help the justice. An AI judge can't be wrong. It was their frame of thinking, which of course is itself wrong because I mean, how many times within the past, 3 years when AI's come out have people convinced it into believing something that wasn't true or making it say terrible things? Like it's just not possible. So that's the conflict that's going on. And when Chris Raven, the character Chris Pratt plays, is accused of murder, which he didn't do, despite all the facts looking like it, he has to convince this AI that, hey, I didn't do it. But the AI has a certain amount of facts. So that's why Chris Pratt has to sift through the whole caseload and whatnot. And I'm not going to say whether or not he he wins or he loses the case or whatnot, but the general plot point is that he's innocent of his wife's murder. And now I'll get into a spoilery topic, so skip ahead like 20 or 30 seconds. But there's different points where Chris Pratt's talking to the AI, talking about how he's making assumptions and judgments based off of his gut, like based off of his what makes him human, essentially. And that's really interesting because the judge doesn't really understand that. Rebecca Ferguson doesn't understand that. And so it's a very complicated thing. And by the end of the movie, they realize, they being the people, that this AI judge isn't necessarily the best uh, person to decide what happens to criminals. After they also realized that she proceeded and prosecuted on a case that should have resulted in being innocent, but wasn't due to human intervention. So it's very interesting how they portray AI. And I don't necessarily think this is a positive thing. I think it's something where it's like, yeah, we're getting involved, very, very deeply involved in AI, but AI can still go wrong. Things can still happen. I mean, most of us have seen the Terminator movies, so we know that AI can kind of go down the crapper. Still, as AI becomes increasingly popular, I still think a movie like this has some worth to it, even if it's not like the best movie in the world. I do feel like there's some things about it. And that's it. That's all I have to say. I give the movie a C plus, a 65 out of 100. It's entertaining. As far as an action movie goes, I can definitely see how this might not be for everyone, as Chris Pratt sifts through caseloads of stuff. But I still found it entertaining, convincing in performances, and had some decent action. But that's all I have to say. So thank you everyone so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed another movie review. As always, go see movies in theaters. That's where they're meant to be seen. Doesn't have to be this movie. Can be some other movie. Just go see a movie in theaters. Hope you all have a wonderful day doing whatever it is that you shall be doing. And I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take it easy. Peace.